This is one of my old food forests. I spent half a decade bringing fertility to this tiny 0.2 acre plot of land. But I just started a farm and we need to get growing plants fast. So we've got to pack up some nutrients and bring them to the farm. Let's make some compost. I've seen a lot of stuff about greens and browns on other composting videos on the internet. But that's the wrong way to understand how to make good compost. And since coffee grounds and animal manure are brown but function as a green, it's not super intuitive either. So we're gonna put those greens and browns in the trash where they belong and learn how to make compost on a molecular level. Compost has 4 ingredients that should be added in equal parts: carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and water. And once you start understanding these ingredients, you start to learn that you can make compost out of basically anything. Every year, I make one giant compost pile, and I use the fertility in that pile to start the next one. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. Let's start with the carbon. I live in Central Florida, and our natural soil is so fine that the locals call it sugar sand. Nutrients and water both run right through it. To counter this, the biggest strategy available to us fruitful farmers and gardeners is adding carbon to the soil. But compost microbes, especially the fungi, use carbon as a food source. I'll be showing you guys how to grow mushrooms later, and we'll be covering this in more detail then. But for now, you should know that this is part of why carbon continuously leaches out of the soil. And that's what makes biochar so great. It's a rich source of carbon that breaks down slowly over several decades. To maximize the benefits of my biochar, I make fires in a very specific way. I'm using a blend of pyrolysis, hydrolysis, and steam expansion. I'm also making some dinner. Biochar is the carbon structure left behind after burning organic material, and it acts like a battery for soil microbes. After setting up a roaring fire, I pack my fire pit with leaves, branches, and other yard waste to smother it and create a low oxygen environment. Then I use hydrolysis and steam expansion to boost its microbe carrying capacity. Biochar comes in many different shapes and sizes depending on how it's produced, so there's a pretty wide range of variability in different samples. Let's run this back through our microscope so I can show you why all this matters. At 10 times magnification, we see exactly what we'd expect, a solid lump of charcoal. But let's take a closer look. With our electron microscope, we can see the tiny pores that make up the sample. If you stopped here, your biochar would be perfectly fine. It'll have plenty of pores for the microbes and the water to cling to, but we can kick it up a notch. This is the magic step. Even if we fail to get up to temperature and don't achieve perfect pyrolysis throughout the pile, adding water to the mix does an incredible job of multiplying the surface area for microbes. And the various shapes and sizes of nooks and crannies offers different environments for different species. As the biochar continues to break down after being run through a compost cycle, each pore has a more textured edge that microbes can attach to. In this image, if you look closely, you can see that some of the microbes have already moved in. After several years in the soil, and after countless cycles of nutrient processing, the carbon structure becomes even more chaotic and complex, allowing for a far wider range of microorganisms to thrive. In fact, if we zoom into the sample a little, we can see a few different species of microbes hanging out. Now let's give these guys something to eat. For the past few months, most of the meat I've eaten came from animals that I hunted and butchered myself. So I might throw in a little bit more animal parts than most people, but the same thing holds true if you only have plants. They're both good sources of nitrogen, But meat and animal waste will provide a whole lot more, because as the protein breaks down, it produces ammonia and amino acids that are directly available for plants. And if you stick around till the end of the video, I'll show you how you can make piles like this that don't stink, don't attract rodents, and break down quickly. I'm energy efficient, so I hate turning piles. So every year, I set up a large pile with lots of different sizes of branches in the middle of it. As the branches break down, the channels they leave allow oxygen to penetrate deep into the pile, which helps prevent those stinky anaerobic bacteria from growing. I also use a perforated compost lining to keep as much oxygen in the pile as possible. The sifting I'm doing right now is just icing on the cake. This step also adds oxygenation, but it's mostly for filtering the large pieces out of the final compost mix. For the farm, I'll be building something to automate this step, but for now, I'll try to enjoy the exercise. I live in Florida, the hurricane capital of the world. So I let nature do a lot of the hard work when it comes to keeping my compost pile hydrated. Once everything's added to the compost pile, it should be about 50 to 60% water. And the math is kinda hard because water comes with the carbon and nitrogen sources in most cases. So it doesn't have to be perfect. But if you live in a place with a lot of rain like I do, make sure your compost pile is either really well draining or covered with a tarp, so that nature won't undo all that hard work we did adding oxygen. By now you guys understand a good amount, and you probably have ideas of things that you can use in your environment to make good compost piles. But it's one thing to understand the theory, and another thing to see it actually being done. Let's head over to the farm and take a look at how I like to build my piles, so we can put it all together. I always start my piles with an impermeable barrier so that roots from the surrounding plants can't get into the compost. And after making sure that my compost is going to stay in one place, I fill my pile with whatever nitrogen and carbon sources I can get my hands on. A lot of people may think that the type of raw materials you put into your pile will determine the amount that it smells, but that's not quite true. I've spent a lot of time out in the woods hunting my own meat, so I put a lot of disturbing things in my piles. They never smell. In most cases, there are two causes of a stinky compost pile. The first is not having enough carbon to balance the rotting nitrogen sources. And the second is because your pile has gone anaerobic. That means there's either too much water or not enough oxygen. Probably both. Either way, you can remedy this by mixing a dry source of carbon into your compost pile. I know I talked a lot about biochar earlier, and biochar does do a better job of blocking scents, but my preferred material for this is shredded paper. Just make sure you're using paper without any additives and biodegradable ink. The ammonia that off-gasses from the rotting nitrogen sources in a compost pile can be absorbed by a layer of carbon on top of it. So remember, no matter what source of nitrogen you use, adding dry carbon into and on your compost piles will both cut down the scent and increase the nutrient load of your final product.